You can drive a race-winning car at Texas Motor Speedway. There's a winning truck in the woods of Pennsylvania. And the car from one of NASCAR's greatest moments is a museum piece with different sheet metal. Teams spend hours building cars in the shop. They bring them to the track and use them to chase their dreams. But when that car is no longer needed, what happens to it? Race cars and their craftsmanship live on, sometimes for a lot longer than realized. Like individual drivers have stories, so do the cars themselves. They go back to the track for decades, their accomplishments carried with them. Sometimes they fade away in front of everyone. There's a lot of history hidden under the sheet metal. At Dover in April 2023, a Twitter user spotted a show car for the Westgate Resorts. It now carries a 2012 Ford Fusion body on it, but the roll bar extending across the cockpit near the passenger's seat, the chassis number tells it had an interesting life. The car is Roush 82, and the two numbers following it tell that it was built in November 1999. Records show that originally it was a Mark Martin Ford Taurus, raced on short tracks in the 2000 season. Its first race was at Bristol in March, where it struggled to a 16th place finish. Then it returned at New Hampshire in July. There, Mark led 13 laps and finished third in the rain-shortened race.
This is chassis JR82, which debuted at Bristol, ran 16th. They're not planning any big changes to the car, just taking 4 tires and fuel. They tested this car last week at Lakeland right after running in the Pepsi, and they feel pretty good about it. We heard Jimmy Fennick say earlier, the car is good, it's just not real fast.
It returned at Bristol in August and ran much better than it did in the spring, leading 46 laps and finishing third. It was brought back for Richmond in September, where Mark again finished third for a third straight race. The car was quickly prepared for New Hampshire a week later. In the notorious race where New Hampshire had restrictor plates, Mark finished 8th. The car returned at Martinsville in October, where it struggled to an 18th place finish. Records don't say what happened to the car after the 2000 season. While some become show cars for advertising, some cars stay on track at racing schools. Such is the case with a car that was found at the NASCAR Racing Experience at Texas Motor Speedway. This car appears to be another 2012 Fusion, and inside carries the chassis label saying Roush 175. Records show that this was originally a Kurt Busch Ford Taurus from 2002. Its debut race at Kansas was derailed by mechanical failure. The car returned at Homestead, where it won the pole and the race.
Checkered flag is up. The Ford of Roush Racing wins the Ford 400. Kurt Busch is the winner at Miami.
Results show that it wasn't raced much in 2003, only a close second-place finish at Pocono. In 2004, the car ran only a handful of races on flat tracks. At Richmond in May, Busch ran strong before breaking belts on the engine. Then at New Hampshire in July, Busch led 110 laps and won the race. The car was put aside and prepared for the return to New Hampshire in September, which was the first race ever for NASCAR's playoff system.
Since his car left victory lane in July, this team has saved it for this race, Bill.
It was even better this time, leading over half the race and winning, propelling Busch to the points lead.
As Kurt Busch sees the checkered flag and begins his chase for the Nextel Cup with a victory.
It returned at Phoenix, where it finished 10th and helped Busch keep the lead on his way to the Cup Championship. In 2005, the car returned to Phoenix and was dominant, leading 219 laps and winning its 4th race. The car was raced a handful of times throughout the year, including a second-place finish at New Hampshire in July. When Kurt Busch was released from Roush Racing in November, Kenny Wallace drove it in Phoenix. In 2006, Jamie McMurray raced it 3 times, but by then the competition had caught up to the great old car, and a 14th place finish at Phoenix was the best that it could do. After 4 wins and over $2 million in earnings, the Cup career for chassis 175 was over, and now it spends its days driven on track as part of the NASCAR Racing Experience. In June 2023, a car was offered for sale on Facebook. It was a David Gilliland Ford show car, but underneath it had an even more significant history. Roush Chassis 570, built in January 2008. This was a very good car for the Carl Edwards team, raced 6 times on intermediate tracks. In his first race, Edwards qualified 4th at Atlanta and was leading with 50 to go when its engine blew. The car returned to Texas, where it dominated and won in front of a crowd of 190,000 fans. It led 12 laps in the All-Star race, led 21 at Michigan in June, 85 at Dover in September, and finally led 98 laps at Atlanta and won its second race of the year. Edwards won 9 races and finished second in points that season, with this car playing a major role. The car was last raced at Richmond in September 2010 when it won the pole and finished 10th, after this time leading 95 laps. The car was then sold to Front Row Motorsports, but records for its time there are not available. Some cars have a very long life and continue to race for decades. In 2025, Brayton Laster will compete in the ARCA series, driving a car originally built for Herzog Motorsports in June of 2001. This was built by chassis builder Ronnie Hopkins and raced by the team on intermediate tracks. Originally raced by Jimmy Johnson, the car wasn't the one that won Chicago in July 2001, but it did see action as a Chevy Monte Carlo. Now carrying a Chevy SS body panels, the car will return to the track in the coming year. As it happens, Brayton was born in August 2002, meaning his car is 14 months older than he is, but still going strong. While some old cars stay on the track, the worst fate that can happen to one is the junkyard. It's common for teams to sell old cars to racetracks for safety crews to practice driver extraction on real cars. As a result, many tracks have a car graveyard somewhere on the property. In April 2023, David Land was at Indianapolis for Indy 500 testing when he found these 2 cars. In the back, we see a show car for the Showtime program Inside NASCAR, which aired between 2010 and 2012. Here's the car on the show. But in the front, we see a Kurt Busch Miller Lite Dodge Charger. Fortunately, looking through the windshield, the chassis number is visible, chassis 526. This car had a very short life and was only raced once. At Las Vegas in March 2008, Busch qualified 9th, but crashed hard late in the race, giving it the condition it sits in now.
We got a car in the wall.
Kurt Busch, and I mean, he has pounded it. Boy, that car is skinny. Look at that thing, Larry.
Pocono has a junkyard outside Turn 1. There's a lot of bare chassis, and a truck raced by Kevin Wood in 2008. But in the back, hard to see, is a black truck with a number 5 on the roof, a Mike Skinner Toyota Tundra for Randy Moss Motorsports. In another picture, we see the partial sponsorship on the quarter panel saying A.com. There's only one race that carried sponsorship like that, letting us know this is the truck Skinner crashed at Charlotte in May of 2009. Records show that it was chassis MDM-102, originally built for Morgan Dollar Motorsports, and a popular truck for the Skinner team that year. It was raced at Fontana, finished 4th at Atlanta, and won at Kansas, scoring the first ever NASCAR win for team owner and NFL Hall of Famer Randy Moss. Skinner entered Charlotte leading the Truck Series point standings and racing this chassis for the 4th time in 6 races. After leading the first 27 laps, Skinner was shuffled back to mid-pack during the first caution flag. It was then that the truck completed its final lap.
Here's 2 and 3 wide just behind him coming out of 4.
Oh,
Taylor Mawson
was completely sideways and spinning through the grass.
And back out onto the racetrack in front of a few trucks.
Oh, Skinner gets clobbered. Skinner gets hit hard down into Turn 1.
On his side is Mike Skinner, back on the wheels now.
Skinner was unhurt, but the team's best truck was wrecked beyond repair, and maybe could have scored a few more wins. While Skinner finished 3rd in points, perhaps this truck could have brought him closer to a championship. Instead, it sits in a Pennsylvania forest. Things aren't much better for 102's sister truck, which was spotted by racer Brad Perez at Charlotte in January 2023. MDM-101 was raced in 2008 when Donnie Leah finished 10th at Las Vegas in September 2008. In 2009, Mike Skinner started racing it after 102 was destroyed and finished 11th at Texas in June. He led 31 laps with the truck at Bristol in August. Eventually, it wound up with Athenian Motorsports and was raced by John West Townley. At Phoenix, their junkyard sits outside Turn 1. There sits a Spears Racing Chevy Silverado, likely raced by Eric Almirola in 2006. There's a Ford Fusion body raced by Trevor Bayne at Talladega in October 2012, and a stripped-down Chevy Monte Carlo for Kevin Harvick Incorporated that gives just enough clues to identify. This car's right side sheet metal remains, though heavily damaged and badly faded. The number 33 Old Spice logo and memorial decal on the door tell us this is almost certainly the car that Tony Stewart crashed hard at Charlotte in May of 2006.
Oh, trouble. Tony Stewart, the 33 car, another hard lick. I mean, there's parts and pieces all over the racetrack.
Tony's hit that wall a ton.
Talladega also has a race car graveyard, but across the property sits the International Motorsports Hall of Fame, and among the significant cars it houses is one at the center of NASCAR's greatest moments. But you wouldn't know it by looking at it. In the 2001 Daytona 500, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was driving DEI chassis number 4. He finished second by inches in the twin 125-mile qualifying race and approached the end of the Daytona 500 running second to his teammate, with his father behind in third. Tragically, Dale Earnhardt lost his life on the final lap of the race. Despite the pain of losing a father, Dale Jr. was determined to win at Daytona when they returned, and the team quickly got to work preparing that same car to be as fast as possible for the July race.
When Dale lost his life at Daytona, we all went to work that Monday, and Dale Jr. walked in. He said, "I want to go back 4th of July. I'd like to win that race." And Pop said, "We're going to start on a car right now." That car didn't go to our fab shop. It was built right there in Nate's shop. We hung the body on it.
The 2001 Pepsi 400 was one of the greatest moments in sports history when Dale Jr. won the race. NBC's coverage saw 25 million people watch a portion of the event, and the car they saw win was the Budweiser number 8.
But it's going to be Dale Earnhardt Jr. using lessons learned from his father to go from 6th to 1st and score the victory in the Pepsi 400.
That's unbelievable.
The sheet metal it carried that night promoted the MLB All-Star Game. The scuffed right door from that night hangs in the Dirty Mo Media studio in Mooresville, but the car itself was rebuilt and prepared for Talladega in October.
Look at this move by Jr. at the white flag. Dale Earnhardt Jr. has won the $1 million bonus here at Talladega.
Chassis number 4 was a great car and was prepared to give Dale Jr. a chance to win the Daytona 500 a year after losing his father in the same race. What potentially could have been a legendary moment was spoiled by a blown tire early in the race. Still, the car was rebuilt and returned to Talladega in April.
Here comes Michael to the bottom, and he's going to run out of time. Earnhardt Jr. wins at Talladega.
Looking for a repeat of the win in the Pepsi 400, the car was brought back to Daytona, where it wasn't quite as fast as their teammate Michael Waltrip, and Earnhardt finished 6th. Again, it raced at Talladega in October, and this time was dominant once more.
And now Dale Earnhardt Jr. is going to become only the second man in this track's history to score 3 straight wins at Talladega Superspeedway. Earnhardt Jr. to the checkered flag. He wins the EA Sports 500.
The car was paired with an equally great engine, as throughout all this, it carried the same power plant, motor number 11.
Number 11.
Number
011.
011.
Yep.
We won 3 of the 4 in a row at Talladega with it. We won shootouts and qualifying races and the July race at Daytona, I believe, maybe.
Yep.
I don't know. This engine was a very special engine.
After Talladega in October 2002, chassis number 4 was retired. The great old car was kept in the exact condition in which it left victory lane. 3 straight wins at Talladega, 4 in total. It was on display at the DEI Museum for many years until it was moved to the Talladega Museum in 2021. An old race car can show up in a lot of places. Sometimes it carries a story you wouldn't expect.